Hey guys, note to self, do not put on necklace with the rings on your hands because your rings will get stuck into your hair and you'll spend 5 minutes almost crying as you try to rip out the rings out of your hair. Anyways, hey guys, welcome back to my thoughts. It's currently 11 p.m. and of course, I've been preparing for this video all day. I wish you guys could see how good I look in person. It's crazy. It's actually insanity. It's insanity how good I look. Anyways, today we're going to be reading, or we're going to be listening to my thoughts after reading, or like almost finishing because I had like a couple of pages left and I'd spent so much time on it. I was just like, I need to get this out. What even, girl, it is called already messing up. This is by Bell Hooks, The Will to Change, Men, Masculinity, and Love. Anyway, so we're gonna go through a couple of things in general before I start going by pieces or like words that I've highlighted. This is going to be a very unfiltered, uncensored kind of video with very minimal cuts. And I hope that you guys enjoy this kind of long form content, but also give me grace when I do say something and it doesn't feel right. I'm trying my best to use the correct words and also to convey what I'm trying to say in a respectful manner, because one of the things that I really do not want to fall into is just propagating the same patriarchal bias or going into bioessentialism. So if there's things that you feel like I have not said correctly, please do say it and like try to be nice about it, because I'm also trying my best and I'm also trying not to cuss. I'm very good at actually not cussing, but still like something I'm trying to avoid. So a couple of things that I will say. Um Okay, so I'm gonna write. Okay, so the first thing I'm gonna read is probably like things that I really like, quotes from the book that I think, because I don't know, this is in my notes and I've been reading this book for months. So this is my notes app. It says, men are given the opportunity to burn, to be touched by an inner fire, to live life of substance, to be changed utterly. And I feel like, especially when we talk about feminism in conjunction to men, if men can be feminists, if men can be allies, I think this is mostly what most intersectional feminists are rooting for. It's not that we hate men. I do not think that feminists hate men, because there's a word for women that hate men, right? And when it comes to feminism, a lot of it is actually believing the fact that men can change, right? And the thing that I really want to focus on is that me and my friends, we've been discussing this a lot about whether men want to change, right? Because the word will means that there is a voluntary kind of conviction to be the change that to bring about change that they would want to. And now I think, especially as radical feminists, as intersectional feminists, a lot of us are trying to figure out how to get men to get that will, right? Because I think the one fault that I find within the book is that there's a lot of mentioning of we need to focus on men, like feminism has completely, discarded away boyhood, which I don't think is true. That we're just all like trying different strategies to bring about that will to change. And the thing is, especially what I will say, is that that book, maybe for the time that it was written, was very revolutionary. Or you can tell that it is an old book, that the patriarchy that we're dealing with right now is not the patriarchy that we had back then, because there has been a men's mental health movement. There has been feminists who are focusing on removing patriarchal gender roles, on trying to, get more feminist men on board, to get men to be more feminist. And the thing is, as a Kenyan woman, I can see that it just think men just don't care, right? And so you ask yourself that question, and we're gonna delve in deeper into this. What my friends and I talk about is not really um, it's not really about the will to change, but rather the potential to change. To see, because I'm a person who believes that men themselves do not think that they can change. Because I talk a lot with guys, or like guys my age, right? If I engage in debate, if I engage in discussion, they're like, what's the point? What's the point? Men are just gonna be men. It's like boys will be boys rhetoric also comes from men themselves because they do not see themselves as people that can change, right? I think especially when we talk about patriarchy, a lot these the gender binary really kind of puts people into role outside of being human. So there's like, oh, I'm a woman, I'm a man, right? But like men don't. But where's the thing like, oh, like I'm human, and human beings can change. And men kind of see themselves as, I always say they see themselves as beasts who are imprisoned by their own, like they're imprisoned by their own beliefs that they are fundamentally flawed. Because one thing that capitalism actually, like, one thing that it depends on is self-hate. If you do not hate yourself, you will not be longing to be a better version of yourself, to buy these products, to get to the top of the corporate ladder. Like it literally needs you to hate yourself. And because patriarchy is like what the bath, like the bath of bath capitalism, men especially being the first ones to be put into formal work, into capitalist work, they feel that intensely. And not only that, when we think about masculinity and how it is tied to money, a lot of men do feel like, I don't know how, you need to hate yourself because you need to be on your grind. Okay. You need to always be grinding. You always need to make the most money. You need to prove your manhood. Another thing that she talks about in the book is women and children all over the world want men to die so that they can live. And that is such a, not scary, but also just like thinking about how true that is. Like the amount of times we think about, or we always say like, imagine if men didn't exist, if men, like, I can finally walk outside, I can finally be free, I can finally live a full life. Because that's one thing that I think a lot of men do not understand, especially Kenyan men, when we talk about feminism and why it is so important, is because women are being deprived of a full life because they're in fear. Or even if they're not in fear, they might get into a relationship with a man who takes away their life. We do not have a full experience of being a human being, especially when we think about patriarchal capitalism being something that was originally made for, white manhood. A lot of how we experience life, we do not come close to experiencing what a full life without being discriminated against, without being in fear feels like. Like I literally hated every single time my parents would tell me you can't go anywhere because you're a girl, because things can happen to you. I hated that, and I felt like I was being denied something that my brother could have. And I think that that already is fundamentally shows that in society we see men, or like patriarchy has made it so that men are synonymous with evil. That if men are out there, if you as a woman even walk out into the world, they can do anything to you, they can harm you. And I say that when I talk about the potential to change, I think that a lot of men do not think that they can change this because they think that it is the world order, that's how it's supposed to be. Also, she talks a lot about needing men, right? And so I wrote, we need humans. It is a human trait. We have connections with each other. And I'm thinking about it more on like, if you think about cousins, if you think about brothers, if you think about fathers, I think more than it being about men, it's more about connecting to the people around you, and the people, and 50% of the world is men, right? So I think it is very human in us. I do not really necessarily, because I feel like once you start saying like, oh, we need men, it's like, to what capacity, to what extent? I feel like there just needs to be a bit more like careful rhetoric when we talk about needing men, especially since the world has been centered around men. Like it also just a lot of different issues. Like it kind of demonizes single motherhood, it demonizes communal living between women who raise children. Like, what does that mean? In what capacity? Do I believe that? I mean, it's also it's a lot there, and we're gonna talk about it further. Mm, I think that, hmm, I think that one thing that really stuck out to me is that as Miss Hooks talks about her experiences with her father, with her brother, with her ex-boyfriends. You could clearly see that it's written from a point of almost how do I say this in a nice way, but desperation. And I'm saying that in a really, really nice way, in a desperation to see men as good, to explain the actions of these men that have had her, men that acted in patriarchal ways. And I think as a person who has actually grown up with, you know, a mostly emotionally available father with a very respectful brother. I love my brother so much. Like he's such a respectful guy, and having a best friend who's a guy who's also super respectful and also working on his feminism. I can really see a lot of things clearer, maybe, or like I have more critique toward manhood outside of the fact manhood in patriarchy, and not only blaming it on the system. Because one thing that I always say is that so far in feminism, or even when it comes to just fighting for equal rights, a lot of the responsibility has been put on women, but it's never, men are never given the torch and told, hey, like, can you guys like stop? That's always been our focus on how we can do it, which sucks because our freedom is contingent on people, on the oppressors actually seeing that there's a problem and wanting to change it. And in a country like Kenya, my God, my God, my God. So I feel like one thing is we need to understand, especially as radical feminism. I'm more of an intersectional feminist myself, an African feminist, but radical feminists does say that it is irrational to love your oppressor, which is true. Like a lot of our lives are centered around putting men in the middle, like even when it comes to romantic relationships, centering romantic relationships. If you're a heterosexual woman, that means you're going to center your partner who is a man. And even just like when we talk about beauty politics, respectability politics, all these are just centered around the male gaze. So I feel like a lot of this can come from that, right? Like this whole like wanting to defend men to this extent, or like create a case for, and it's not like as if the patriarchy doesn't like, I'm trying to be so careful with my words because I understand that the patriarchy affects men negatively and affects women on a on a deeper level, on a more severe level, but men are still affected by it. I still feel, in my opinion, that men do not do enough. Men do not think that they can change, and that's why they do nothing. They remain complacent because they do not find themselves as human beings. They hate themselves because patriarchy tells them that they need to always get better. You cannot focus on improvement. Like you wouldn't want to always focus on improvement if you actually liked yourself. You know what I mean? And they just see themselves as like beasts almost. Like it's crazy. But also just like there's not other men talking about it and being like we are going through a crisis, because I think especially when it comes to women talking about feminism, they'll be like, why is no one talking about men's mental health? Why are there no men talking about men's mental health? Right? Like what are we whatever. So me and my friend Nyabongo, one of my few we talk a lot about feminist theory and what feminism looks like for us. And I kind of said that potential plus self-sacrifice would lead to change, because you to be a feminist man is to really sacrifice your place in the hierarchy, especially when we're talking about African manhood, African masculinity, to sit down and let go of all these different traditions or norms, patriarchal norms that are found within African societies, is being uncomfortable with the fact that you're going to get ridiculed, with the fact that you're going to be seen as weak. You have to let go, and that is called sacrifice. So seeing yourself first of all as someone who can change, right? This potential to change. And secondly, being able to sacrifice yourself. Like you have to commit gender betrayal, and join women in the fight for liberation, and that would cause change. Because literally, we always talk about how men know that women want freedom, but they just do not care, right? But caring takes a certain level of self-sacrifice, especially within capitalism, to come and join the fight for liberation. So I think mostly it is not about the will to change, but rather the potential to change, the potential to actually believe in a different kind of world. Because feminism, in my opinion, is a restructuring of society on all fronts. That a feminist world would lead to fairness and equality, and people see that as like as some sort of utopia that's unreachable, because I feel like a lot of people project their own, like, I have flaws, so the world is supposed to have flaws, but we can genuinely work towards a better future. And if men, this whole boys will be boys thing, and then accepting that evil at the moment is synonymous with evil, if that stops, then there is a potential to change. And I feel okay. So the last thing that I have on my notes is that there's an addiction to pain, and in capitalism, that's kind of what's kind of like fostered, is that it's okay to be in pain. Like pain is part of the process. Like you're supposed to be working hard. You're supposed to all these different things. But again, I do think that you gain a lot more. That even though like being a feminist man means a level of sacrifice and a level of discomfort, the benefits are far outweigh, far outweigh, because it's either you're caught up in toxic masculinity where you don't really like have emotions, like you're not allowed humanity, or yeah, you get ridiculed a bit for being a wimp, and you have to prove yourself to a couple of feminists, but at the end of the day, you're gonna have deep connections. You're going to touch back to your humanity. You're going to rethink a lot of different things, find a purpose, find fulfillment, actually care about other people. And I feel like that's such a great reward. And I wrote here, no one loses in kindness. You don't lose, like, trust. Trust. Okay, so we're gonna be going like highlights, the highlights that I've made in the book, and also the thoughts that I had put right next to them highlights. And yes, so I'm super excited. I'm just trying to find it. Okay, I do not know how to literally work this. Okay. I was like, whoa. So on page 15, she writes, "It is not true that men are unwilling to change. It is true that many men are afraid to change. It is true that masses of men have not even begun to look at the ways that patriarchy keeps them from knowing themselves, from being in touch with their feelings, from loving. To know love, men must be able to let go the will to dominate. They must be able to choose life over death. They must be willing to change." But now the question is how we get to the will, right? And I feel like the will needs to be, you have to know that you have the potential to change, that it can be successful, that this is not something that is going to take, like, sure, like we're all gonna go through it, because again, I'm a person who says like patriarchy is the bedrock of everything, so everyone is kind of going, everyone is a benevolent patriarch at the moment, but we're all gonna be in it together. So being willing to choose life over death, I think, is a very good way to put it. And getting that potential, how, like, is basically what radical feminists, what intersectional feminists try to do, is kind of show them like, hey, like, we're not gonna engage with you until you actually want to change. Like that is how we live. That is how we want to live, is that you guys must want to change. If she is heterosexual, this is on page 16. If she is heterosexual, she wants the love of a male partner. We live in a culture where emotionally starved, deprived females are desperately seeking male love. Our collective hunger is so intense, it rends us. And yet we dare not speak it for fear we will be mocked, pitied, shamed. To speak our hunger for male love will demand that we name the intensity of our lack and loss. okay, I think a lot of things here, if they are read by like, me as a feminist right now, or like by a radical feminist, they'd be like, emotionally starved. Like, I understand the sentiment because I definitely feel it. Like, as a woman who does date men, it's a lot of like me kind of having hope that I will one day find a like a guy that's like okay like actually working towards that, but also just being okay if that doesn't happen, right? Because one thing that I do preach is that understanding that patriarchy exploits, it exploits romantic relationships between men and women. And for me, I have definitely accepted that if I do not find a guy who has the potential to change, the will to change, I am not going to date them. Like, that's just not, like, I don't want that. And so for me, I find that I understand that definitely, like, there's some sort of shaming if you say like, oh, like, I really do want nee, nee, nee. But it is for a good cause. Like, you shouldn't be desperate for male attention because it can ruin you. Like, you can be desperate for a man, you get together with any man. Okay, my ring is stuck to my hair. You get together, ooh, you get together with any man and then he ruins your life. So I would say that I understand that why we dissent men, and also I definitely think we should work towards a world where if you do not find a guy who is emotionally available, who is willing to work on his patriarchal bias, his misogynistic tendencies, then you should be okay with staying alone. And because it is a political statement, dating is a political statement. When you're a woman, everything that you do is political because it affects other women. And if we all kind of had the same conclusions, like, yeah, guys, like, because guys are not the best right now, we're not gonna date, right? And I feel like that's that's important to say. I'm just trying to find places where I actually did write notes because I have a lot of, I don't know. Okay, so it says, who, this one's triggering. To create loving men, we must love males. I fear we are playing with the patriarchy too much. We're playing with the patriarchy. We're playing because I haven't we been doing that. Like, I generally, like, that's how, like, women have been loving men. Like, that was kind of the issue. It's like we were loving men too much that they actually did believe that they were center of the universe. We were literally forced to center men in our lives. To create loving men, we must love males. I'm like, no, because domestic violence exists, right? Like, and the women who love these men are the ones that are the victims. Only a revolution of values in our nation would end male violence, and the revolution would necessarily be based on a love ethic. I feel like just getting these men to want to love is the issue. And a lot of us are just saying that we are going to withhold our love for you guys until you actually want to and see how much you actually need to like engage with us. And I just feel like it's more of like a social ostracization. I feel like that's the best way to go about it. If a guy is not being where you want him to be, don't engage with him, right? I think it gets more complicated with family, but um I feel like when it comes to dating, especially, it's just like the way to do it. It's like if you can't engage with me on an emotionally available level, we don't have to talk here, my brother. Let's move on. And I feel like if all of us were like that, they wouldn't have like options to go to and terrorize. Hey, people are being terrorized in that Nairobi. If you have closed off your heart, shut down your emotional awareness, then you do not know how to love your sons. Where and when along the way did you learn the practice of love? That's a good anecdote. I'm trying to, because I've literally like highlighted so much. Okay, here. We cannot change men, but we can encourage, implore, and affirm their will to change. And that is what I'm talking about. We must implore them radically, right? And that looks like, and it doesn't even have to be, it's not anything crazy. For me, movement is a radical movement. Like that one, you know, for me, it's just like, it's as easy as not dating if someone doesn't meet feminist standards. That's it. If a guy is not a nice person, because people date mean people, you date unkind people, and it's just like, it's so, dude, we don't even have to do that. You don't have to do that. And this is another thing that really, really scared me. I spent most of the years between 20 and 40 seeking to know love with intellectually brilliant men who are simply emotionally unaware. I cannot believe this is bell hooks I'm reading. I'm just like, why? Why? But this is what I'm saying. Like, I can't say it could never be me because it can always be you. It can always be you. But just I feel like that for me really shows that there was a need of, good figures, manly figures. And that's why a lot of this book to me kind of feels just like defending the guys, which is very important, especially when talking about patriarchy, but it's just not something that I would pioneer at the moment or like push out in terms of rhetoric. And I just do not like, yeah, this is what I'm thinking. This is where my head is at. Ultimately, boys and men save themselves when they learn the art of loving. Why did I just like highlighted and just didn't say anything. I was just highlighting. I was like, no, but I'm like, it's already like 30 minutes and I cannot go through every single one. And so it says the use of violence to reinforce our indoctrination and acceptance of patriarchy. And I said we have never experienced a world without patriarchy. Violence is the language of patriarchy. The way we raise our children is in a very patriarchal way. Even if we're talking about raising girls, like in Africa, in Kenyan households, girls get beaten in school, girls get beaten as well. So when we talk about a system that relies on physically dominating people that are deemed as beneath, right? When you beat a child, that's patriarchal thinking, that hierarchy that exists. Like our world in patriarchy deems or like demands for hierarchies. In feminism we talk about equality and equity. So that is patriarchal. That is literally patriarchal. The use of violence is to reinforce our indoctrination and acceptance of patriarchy, right? And I said we have never experienced a world without patriarchy. And I say that because when we talk about conflict, we have gone through so many wars in the world. And in feminism, war would not be the answer. It would not be the way that anything would start, like anything would be resolved, or any type of physical violence or trying a show of strength. Like that would just not be the case. Okay, so this is chapter 3 called Being a Boy. Boys are not seen as lovable in patriarchal culture. And I say yes and no, right? I feel like it depends on a lot of different things, especially when we talk about African patriarchy. In African patriarchy, men are loved, men are worshipped, men are adored, right? So when people get boy children, like they are so happy. Like I mean, especially, I mean, not in my family exactly, but I know that my mom gives preferential treatment and like she doesn't know it and she claims that it's just like, oh, it's not like that. But to my brother, who is like, first of all, the last born, last born and the only boy. So there's a lot of love that goes towards boys, in my opinion. And I also get that lovable in them in that there's a lot of men or father figures or even just like as well mothers who withhold affection because they are scared of their boys becoming weak, right? Or them growing up to be a wimp or something of the sort. So that can be seen as why boys are not shown as much love. But I feel like in African society, low key, no one gets love. Maybe I feel like maybe like as a daddy's girl growing up, I will say that but my father was very loving towards all of us. Sorry, it's raining. My father was very loving. I was his favorite when I was growing up, but I do think that my brother also got like my brother is very emotionally available, very emotionally intelligent. So I think that my dad being the way he was really impacted like all of us, right? I feel like generally my mom was so strict. Like my mom was so strict. Like she was like I would say she's a less stricter parent now, but back then she was strict. But I still like hanging out with her, which was weird. Like I don't even understand that. I liked like honestly my parents in the growing up like were very cool and very chill. Where they could be deemed as worthy of rescue from patriarchal exploitation and oppression as were their female counterparts. So I wrote here, what does maleness mean? Restructuring of the gender binary. I think when it comes to manhood, when it comes to masculinity, feminism deems or like what for me means what feminism for me means, especially as a way to restructure society, instead of telling ourselves what I remember my friend Peace, they told me something that was super cool. They told me a lot of times we ask what is not feminist, what is not, what isn't good, what is patriarchal, but we never ask what does this thing in society look like under a feminist lens? How will that look like in feminism? And for me, how I see it, I don't really see there being a set definition for masculinity or femininity. I see it more under a very spiritual lens, something that you just feel. Like there's no set rules, right? I just feel like we shouldn't like I think the demonization maybe is not good, like demonization of either of them. But at the end of the day, I don't really see a particular definition. And there's definitely very many radical feminists who tell you, no, that's patriarchy doesn't exist, which is, a fair statement to make. But I feel like as a person, as an African woman, I just like cannot get behind that because I feel very feminine. Um, but I don't have a definition, and I think it is even harmful to define masculinity and to define femininity. I think that we are supposed to allow people explore whatever that means to them, whatever gender means to them. And of course the gender binary, we are addicted to it, we love it. I think it is there to stay, but we have to now look, what does the gender binary look like in feminism? What does gender expression look like? What does masculinity and femininity look like? What do they look like in a feminist world? um well, okay. And I think I also say not too much on the misandrists at that point. Researchers fear that overly political analysis will alienate readers on one hand, and on the other hand, they may simply have no alternatives visions to offer. And I think that sociological theories are not taken as seriously, and sociology in general as a science is never taken as seriously. Like you try explain to someone like sociological systems, and they will just be like, no, that's not real. Like you're making that up. And it's just like, you will crumble. You will crumble. Okay. Many anti-patriarchal parents find that the alternative masculinities they support for their boy children are shattered not by grown-ups, but by sexist male peers. And I have a personal story to tell. Because, okay, growing up, me and my brother were never close-ish because there was a lot of things, but also just like patriarchal stuff. I feel like my mom was a bit too like, hey, once you start growing up, like we were like kind of treated the same. And once you start growing up, my mom was like seeing a lot of herself in me, and so she was stricter to me than she was to my brother. So I never really like messed with him, like for real. Like I was kind of mad at him, but whatever. But we became super close once like we got older. We're really close right now, and there was a time I think when he joined high school, the first after he came back first term, he was just a completely different person. I remember that I was just like, who is this? Like he was rude, he was acting Sidri how, he was saying things I've never seen before. He was hanging out with people that I was just like, I don't think they're good for you. I don't think they're good for you. And then I think one day I was just so tired. Like I was so tired. I was just like, I don't know who you are anymore. Like you, this is not who you are. Like the people that you're hanging out with, like please, like don't let them change you. Like I was just so scared. I was like, I'm telling you, we're scared of you. Like we not like scared of like he was not violent or anything, but we're just like we're scared for you. Like we've never experienced you like this. Like you're a very kind boy. Like what is going on? Like can you? I was like, what is wrong? And I remember I was not nice about it. Like I wasn't like speaking like this. Me, I was nilikuwa nime it was a bit loud. It was a bit loud, but he was also being a bit disrespectful to my parents. And I was just like, something's going on and it's fishy. And I was just telling him like, you have to change. You have to pattern up right now. Tighten up. I don't know who you've met in school, but you're not going to act like this here. And he did like low key learn from it. So I'm just saying, it went okay. I'm here like all boys are being raised to be killers, even if they learn to hide the killer within and act as benevolent young patriarchs. Which again, as I've said, I think we're all patriarchs. We're all benevolent patriarchs. But I write the patriarchal language of violence when we talk about the police force, when we talk about war. Like the whole world is kind of constructed around this ideology of of violence. Like it's okay to do things in a violent way, and that was that's just how it's been. And I feel like when it comes to feminism, as I've already explained, it's gonna be the world should be looking at a different way. It should come as no surprise then that beneath the surface there's a seething anger in boys, a rage waiting for the moment to be had. And so I wrote, African mothers go through the same thing. I think that a lot of times when African women raise children, they raise them with a lot of anger. Ooh, I have dropped my glasses. So we will go through a lot of maternal sadism as, first of all, girls, right? But also just seeing how harsh they can be and how much anger that can they can have in them. And I feel like that comes from when you finally get a child, and especially in African culture, because children are kind of seen as like robots. Guys, I cannot say this word to save my life. Robots to control. A lot of African mothers are like finally getting some sort of control within their lives, and I feel like they are over controlling, and it kind of comes out in a lot of anger, a lot of rage. Like I don't know, maybe it's just me. Patriarchal fathers cannot love their son because the rules of patriarchy dictate that they stand in competition with their sons. I was just like, people are really going through it. My father is a very anti-stereotypical man. My grandfather was a very anti-stereotypical man. Yeah, I feel like it's definitely a cycle because both my dad and my dad's dad were very kind. They're very kind human beings, very soft spoken, very emotionally there. Like my dad definitely more like not like more emotionally available than my mom, even though it's like no, like it's not a big difference, but it's just like something that I've noticed, and I'm seeing that, oh, because of this thing, like if you have men that can show you how to live life in a very kind way, in a very loving way, then it is very much very possible to also see yourself like that. And I see that as well in my brother. Like my brother's a very kind guy. Even if we've had fight, like he will own up to it and be like, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean it, right? And for setting world where that is acceptable, right? Like, getting married to women who accept that about you, that they do not see you as less than, and, having sisters and cousins who actually celebrate the fact that my brother is very emotionally available. Like, bro, this guy used to cry. Yo, he used to cry. Hey, he used to cry a lot. My parents just let him cry. And I think growing up, low-key annoying. Low-key annoying because you're crying in the middle of the supermarket. So I don't know if it was indiscipline or my parents just letting him be himself. um, but like that now I see that as a very important factor of just like my parents letting my brother be himself, like just letting him feel stuff and not telling him to be a guy, whatever. Like he was just like, yeah, analianga huyo. I was just saying, okay, okay. There's a lot of things. If boys take the rage and sit in front of a computer all day, never speaking, never relating, no one cares. So basically, she talks about how when teenage boys act out violently, no one really cares. And it's usually seen as something that's synonymous with manhood and masculinity. That's how boys are going to act. It's basically the boys will be boys complex of just allowing men to be irresponsible, allowing men to be however they want. I'm going to take off the glasses now for the rest of the video. And I feel like that's a lot of the times when it comes to the expression of anger, that it is totally allowed when men do it because it's just seen as that. And I will say that when it comes to neglect, I don't think that no one cares. I feel like I don't really see it like that. I think people just don't see it as a big deal. I think it's also that guys are not shamed for that in comparison to women who would be shamed for engaging in a violent act. Like if like a group of teenage girls decided to like dismantle something, like people would be like, why are you doing that? Like why are you acting like that? Like, you know what I mean? And I think that is mostly the society's fault about the boys will be boys complex. So here she says, given this reality and the non-committant emotional abandonment of boys, it should surprise no one that boys are violent. Sorry. That they are willing to kill. It should surprise us that the killing is not yet widespread. Ruthless patriarchal assault on the self-esteem. Okay, that's what's next. It's self-esteem. Ruthless patriarchal assault on the self-esteem of teenage boys has become an accepted norm. It should surprise us that the killing is not yet widespread. Globally, femicide is a problem. It is global. It is a global problem. So I would say that is a bit an inaccurate statement because it is definitely widespread. And even things that happen in domestic violence abuse cases are a systemic issue. So again, I feel like men are being excused. Men are being excused for their actions, even though we've said several times, please go to mental health. Like we literally, the world is centered around you. Like fine. Ruthless patriarchal assault on the self-esteem. This is exactly what I meant with self-hate, but I do not think that it is only to men. Okay, I think that women are also affected by it because we join capitalism, but also because of patriarchy, because a lot of us are put down because of our looks. Women are put down because of their looks. The self-hatred that is implanted within women and that is based on looks rather than on what they are or how much money they have. I hope this video is not boring. Like I'm trying so hard to be engaging. While feminism may ignore boys and young males, capitalist patriarchal men do not. And I feel like at that point, at this point that we're at, a lot of us are not, it's not that feminists have ignored or young boys and young males. It's just like we're tired. Tumechoka vane, tumechoka. We've been preaching and preaching and preaching, like to get to a point where there's a 4B movement, raw. Like we're tired. We're so tired, emotionally drained. I think it's allowed. Me, I think it's allowed though. Oh, She says, I want to celebrate boyhood without reinscribing patriarchal norms. And I ask, and I say that, what does this look like again? What does boyhood look like under feminism? And also the fact that the lack of feminist men does not help. It does not help when we try to celebrate boyhood, because what does that mean? What does that mean? Like none of like this, because I feel really weird as a woman who feels feminine to go in and tell you this is what masculinity is supposed to be, but we just asking you to join the movement. To join the movement. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah. Um, these facts address actual physical assault and do not cover the widespread emotional abuse that has practically become an accepted norm in male-female relationships, whether between husband and wife, father and daughter, brother and sister, or girlfriend and boyfriend. A lot of times when we find ourselves engaging with men, they are very disrespectful. They are very emotionally unavailable. They make you feel bad about yourself. And that is emotional abuse, especially I've seen, and I made a video on it on TikTok about male to female friendships. I I have a very good best friend, right? He's male, one of my best friends, and he's so nice to me. So nice to me. I once was in this friend group. Let me not say that. That's actually, yeah, let me keep that to myself. But the video I made it on was about the get ready with me videos, and where the guys would voice over for the girls. And they are so mean, bringing the women down, making them feel bad about themselves. It's like, what are we doing? And not to mention, as I was talking about it, like a lot of because I was talking about it when it comes to Black love, that a lot of Black couples, they're going through misogyny. Like the man will be really rude to the woman, like really rude, hurting her, cheating on her, all these different things. That's emotional abuse. That's symbolic abuse. Like you cannot, like mwanaume anakutesa, yani, hey, you're crying. Someone that you love should not get you to cry. You should be crying tears of joy. You're crying because someone has frustrated you. And it's every day, right? And I feel like this is why we cannot center romance, because it is so prevalent. This emotional abuse, and when we talk about father daughter, like even like having, I feel like sometimes what I've seen, again, like my dad, very different. I don't know. I'm not gonna say very different, because hey, he has made mistakes too, of course. But I think a lot of the time, girls are put to such a high standard by their fathers, like they're pushed to such an extent where you're just like, am I even allowed to be myself? Like there's so much pressure to live it to your dad more than to live it to your mom as a woman. But also some another aspect would be men or fathers really not being emotionally available and being allowed to disengage from, you know, taking care of their children. Like that's emotional abuse. Like the amount of girls I know that are just like their dads. They're just like, yeah, no, my dad's a terrible person. My dad is in this role. Role. Now she talks about her father. And she says, usually a cold, silent, reserved man, dad found his voice when speaking in anger. This man would say, I will kill you. Dude, what? And I wrote, there's a man's responsibility to change at the moment, to change themselves, to see themselves as people that are potential of that have a potential of change. But I also, one thing that is I have is not exploit their biopower. And by biopower, by biopower, I just mean the fact that males are biologically stronger than female people, and they, like, because men know this, there is a responsibility to not exploit this power, to not exploit patriarchal beliefs. And that is the scariest thing, especially in any dynamic, is that, dude, like, your male friend could slap you, you fall, and you never wake up. Well, that's not okay. That's not accurate, but I'm just saying, like, that can happen. And that is the trust that needs to be had. And that's how society would function if guys understand its responsibility and just like acted normal about it. Because we always, like, capitalism has kind of, patriarchy and capitalism have like kind of exploited the negative aspects of being biologically stronger, instead of being like, whoa, like you can do things efficiently, like you can help, this is how you can help, this is how you can contribute to community. It's just like, how can you dominate today? Dude, what? What? Right. This one. No man who does not actively choose to work to change and challenge patriarchy escapes its impact. I don't think anyone can escape patriarchy's impact. I still struggle daily, but a couple of reasons why I definitely believe that is because patriarchy shapes our world. Even if you think that you are the most non-misogynistic person, there's genuinely beliefs around you that make sure that you remain a benevolent patriarch. It does not only affect men, right? The psyche, this patriarchal thinking being embedded in your psyche does not only affect men. If you think about economics, capitalism literally is all about someone doing the best for themselves. Like that's how it's described, that an economic agent makes economic decisions based on what would benefit them the best. It creates a hierarchy. That already, hierarchical thinking, patriarchy. The lack of love everywhere, patriarchy, because we're not allowed to show emotions, patriarchy and capitalism. The inequalities of the world, patriarchy, because patriarchy relies on hierarchy. And feminism relies on equality and equity. So there's a difference. There's a difference. Um, and then she goes on to talk about maternal sadism towards young boys when it comes to sexist women who kind of force, say like you need to be a real man. And that's just boy mom shenanigans, low key. But also as an African feminist, very hard for me to conceptualize because I fear that for me, maternal sadism, or on the African continent, maternal sadism is geared mostly towards girls because boys, African mothers love their boys. They love them. In African tradition, in African society, being a man, like getting a man is the best thing you could ever do. Getting a husband, best thing you could ever do. So it's very hard for me to talk about maternal sadism in this concept. Like I really don't even understand what that would look like in an African setting because I just never see it. I've never experienced it. Like women are so harsh on their daughters in comparison to their sons. That's just the truth. I'm taking a thumbnail. Yeah, that was bad. I'm just I'm sorry. And they also go to say that, and yet we know that whether it is a consequence of power dynamics in dominator culture or simply a reflection of rage, women are shockingly violent toward children. This fact should lead everyone to question any theory of gender differences that suggests that women are less violent than men. And I wonder if women are more violent towards children or men are just not as involved in children's lives. Would I fear that like in my theory, I think that if men were as involved, they would also be as violent. Like it's not a lie that children are an oppressed class in the whole world and especially in Africa. But I fear that it is only because of the proximity towards children that this patriarchal way of raising children becomes apparent. Hmm. Hmm. And here, dad's emotional neglect and abuse and his sporadic violence to mama, she was always quick to remind me that he worked hard and provided for the family, that he was home almost every night, and for that reason alone, we should respect and honor him. And I, again, like this is such a contrast to how I grew up and the type of love I saw my parents have and the type of man my father is. A lot of the times, like I do not think I don't know, I'm not sure that my mother could withstand patriarchal thinking, right? Because I think she's very anti-patriarchal in some things, and then in some other things, I'm not sure because they've really been together for a long time and they're very, very in love. So, but one thing I will say that my dad never put my mother in a position where we'd have to ever test that. The reason I don't know this is because my dad never put my mother in that position. Like there was never a time when my mother had to defend my father or made her feel less than or something of the sort, where I would think, wow, like the patriarchy is really, has really gotten you, because my father just does not put my mother in that position, while men really put women in those positions where they can exploit their patriarchal, like just their hierarchy, their position in the hierarchy of patriarchy, right? Exploiting the male centeredness of the world. My father had never done that. My father has been the one who generally thinks he's lucky to have my mother and not the other way around, as usual in African patriarchy. So that's the thing. Like men have a responsibility to not be bad people. Like you know what I mean? Like as long as, like, yeah, I can understand that women generally stay with very, very bad guys. Why are the guys bad? We should ask ourselves. Oh yeah, this one is my favorite because I like talking about it. Hashtag Black Conversations. Who should pay on the first date? Um, as it is for many men today, it was much easier for him to accept equal pay for equal work, sharing housework and reproductive rights, than it was for him to accept the need for shared emotional development. Dude, in Kenya we don't even have the equal pay for equal work. Like sharing housework. Like I'm reading more, I'm like sharing housework. Reproductive rights. Kenya none. Zero. Right? But you guys will still split a bill with a man. Are you the men are enjoying the fruit of our labor, but what are we enjoying from them? Zero. I'm telling you guys. We're dying every day. I can't, like no, like I can't. Like if I'm going to be like what am I hey Mungu wangu. Now it says patriarchy rewards men for being out of touch with their feelings. Now, I feel like that has changed dramatically. I feel like there's that bias, but patriarchy has revised itself. And that's what I wrote. Patriarchy has revised itself, so now men will act as if they are in touch with their feelings to later on emotionally abuse. There's a fundamental lack of understanding of love. And that's something we see all the time. And like my friend just got out of a relationship, and that guy was like, I'm journaling, I feel so much better, I'm going to therapy, all these different things. But it was just a ploy to make her feel, to get her to stay with him, even though he was very much controlling, he was very much manipulative. But this is a way, and I think that's coercion, and I think it's part of rape culture, as a written about. A lot of how men go about like acting as if they are healed, acting as if they're the better ones. I have gone through, so if I remember, I will be angry. Just like that fundamental pretense. The pretense that exists, like I'm more in touch with my feelings than the other guys, like, but it's just a way to get to you. This is why you gotta keep those, you have to keep them on their toes for a long time. Me, if you're telling me you're emotionally available, let's see how much emotionally available you can be and for how long. Hey, you cannot be joking. Men who try to develop a politics in support of feminism, whether gay or straight, are not in for an easy ride. And that's something I've tried to explain to good men, that every time when women sit, because there's men who will be like, we hate generalizations, please keep us out of it, please. Dude, shut up. Like, shut up. Like, are you understanding? Like, we, a majority, but I'm just gonna engage on that in a very normal way. Men will fundamentally, there will always be a lack of trust between feminists and men, which is fine, which I understand. A lot of men have to prove themselves that they are actually real allies. And that means listening. That means accepting that there will always be points where we're just like, mm-mm. Like, like we're not as sure, we're not as absolutely accepting, because that's just how the world has been set up. And understanding that we as feminists, as women, have the harder time than us being distrustful of you, because you get to exist your life as a man and have that privilege. But I exist as a woman, and I am going to be distrustful of you as well. I'm gonna be like, wow, nice that you are trying, but I am not going to be like, I completely understand you. I completely think that I should not treat you as if you are not an agent of the biggest agent of the patriarchy right now, bro. Like trust. Oh yeah, they're talking about jobs and how men sometimes can feel emasculated through jobs, and how capitalism makes men like they go to work all day, and then they lose out on fundamental bonding with their family and stuff like that. And I want to talk about how corporate culture is patriarchal culture. You have to be like super stiff. There's a dress code, like there's a hierarchy, and women really revolutionized. For example, where I live here in Germany, I live in Germany, but I'm from Kenya. Okay, I'm here for studies. I go back. I'm gonna be back home soon. Can you imagine? Mm, I'm only gonna be here for a couple of semesters. Nachoka tu, nafikiria nachoka. But what I'm trying to explain, I keep saying fundamentally, please. Oh God, take a shot every time I say fundamentally. I. A lot of how when women enter the field, especially here, I feel like when it's a woman-owned company, a lot of things are chiller, right? Remember that TikTok that was made, that was just like, corporate girlies, and it was just like, I don't know, it was like I don't know, the trend was just like a skirt on the top or something like that. And it was corporate, and like that's so nice, and that's what it means when women are now allowed to restructure what corporate culture means. Like, what does it mean to be corporate culture? Like, why am I acting? Why do I have to feel like a subordinate? Why am I being stiff? Why can't I create communities with my fellow with my colleagues? Stuff like that. Like, community is the opposite of patriarchy. It is a feminist ideal. It is a African ideal, and we used to work together, right? Yes. So a lot of when it comes to talking about corporate culture, we're talking about restructuring a fundamentally an originally patriarchal ideal that was made for white capitalist men, and women kind of trying to turn it around and making it a woman friendly environment. Here, I think there was something I literally just have. I have a question mark because I feel like I couldn't believe it. Yet they consistently ignore the degree to which consumer capitalist culture, not feminism, pushed women into the workforce and keeps them there. I was just like, why are we saying that? Like, it's good that women are working and women can make their own money. And I don't think it's only capitalist culture. Like, a lot of how women started working was literally because of war. Like, yeah, that is literally, yeah, that is patriarchy and that is capitalism, but it's good. It's good that we got like financial independence, that is something that we can actually achieve as women. And I just didn't like that that was being mentioned, because it was mentioned as a way to counter like conservative talking points about how women are not children, how children, how men are not women. Shh, almost, almost, about how women are not staying at home and homemaking anymore. And I'm just like, why would, okay, like, so what? So what, T? So what? We have jobs now. Good. Ay, Mimi, I feel like I don't like when people mention stuff like that, because yeah, there's women who probably would enjoy it, but like, why are we pushing it as a rhetoric that's like, oh, it's bad now, or it's just, oh, it's capitalism? No, I think women want to work. Women have worked their whole life, like all of history. Women have worked. Yeah, there has never been an ongoing effort made to address male pain. Again, this was just like in her time, because bro, we have been trying. We have been trying. Feminists, we're shouting from the. Hey, They just don't want it addressed. Like, they think it's the normal natural order. They do not care. And that's the issue right now. Is that they do not care. Even for themselves. They do not care for themselves because they hate themselves, right? They believe that this is okay. Mungu wangu. And then reformist feminist women could not make this call because they were the group of women, mostly white women with class privilege, who had pushed the idea that all men were powerful in the first place. Are they not? Like, yes, of course, like a white guy CEO with a lot of money, definitely more powerful than, a working class man, but the fact that you're a man already gives you privilege, especially in African patriarchy. Not only that, the men themselves believe that. The men believe that they are valuable just by the existence of manhood, and women vilify themselves. Women make themselves feel bad for being born women. Like, African patriarchy is a different breed. Like, this is not like patriarchy does that all by itself. Fine, thanks. There's no feminists being like women. Like, you are. Yeah, people in a continent where you say patriarchal, people are saying patriarchal in a good way. People are saying it's a positive thing. Okay. Then we have, okay, I think I've talked about the dominator model because she calls it the dominator model. I'm more likely to call it hierarchical model. And that also comes up in economics because the economic agent only focuses on his needs. So when you're making your economic decisions, you're kind of seen as the top of the hierarchy. While if you are in a more feminist economist type deal, everyone else matters just as much as you do, so you can't really make decisions that would harm other people. And now onto the last page. It's been an hour of filming and I'm tired and I want to sleep and my back hurts. Anyway, she says the work of male relational recovery, of reconnection, of forming intimacy, and making community can never be done alone. In a world where boys and men are daily losing their way, we must create guides, signposts, new paths. A culture of healing that empowers males to change is in the making. Healing does not take place in isolation. Men who love and men who long to love do this. We need to stand by them with open hearts and open arms. We need to stand ready to hold them, offering a love that can shelter their wounded spirits as they seem to find their way home, as they exercise the will to change. Y'all, it's just hard, I think, to first of all find men that are willing to change. Especially in Africa, right, in Kenya, but also trusting that, right? When you don't even trust yourself, because I do not trust myself. I understand how patriarchy affects me, and I understand that a man is definitely gonna be more affected by that. I'm just trying to, like, we are not, because we've been trying the whole love thing. Are we not? Like, I'm really confused because in the book, she literally talks about how she met this guy and they were together for like 15 years. And towards the end, he started being emotionally abusive. When I think she showed him love because when they met because he was ready to really work for gender equality. So I'm just saying, like, it's not worked. We have to try a new idea. And that idea looks like holding people accountable for their actions, not letting people who do not have feminist ideals come around you. And that goes for both men and women. Working on yourself to unlearn patriarchal bias, but also understanding that there's gonna be things that you just do not know because they are so deeply rooted, and accepting that. For me, I've accepted that patriarchy is not falling in this lifetime. I'm gonna make I'm going to pave a way. I'm going to be smart. I'm going to be strategic about who I engage with. I'm going to make sure, pave a way for the next generation of people to actually live in a feminist world. Yeah. And those are my thoughts. Those are my thoughts. I feel like it's very outdated, the book. Maybe not very, but there was some gems in there and I'm going to, try finish it. But I hope you guys, yeah. I feel like there could have been a lot more that was done. But in that time, I'm pretty sure it was pretty good. and we're just thinking differently on different lines and different circumstances. And I'm a Kenyan woman with high femicide rate in my country, living in fear my whole life. Like it's a very different scenario. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope it wasn't too boring, and I hope there's a lot more of these videos. Yes, thank you and goodbye.